Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This all went down during the 2018-2019 school year. Throughout the entire year, our high school was hit by a crime wave of locker thefts. It wasn't everyone, but enough that we all knew someone who'd been victimized. The school's only defense was to blame us, claiming we must have shared our locker combos with friends. To add insult to injury, they charged us $150 every time we needed to get a combination changed, like after a theft. They assumed it was always our fault. Well, I had my graphing calculator stolen from my locker. I never gave out my combination to anyone, mainly because my friends were jerks and we always pranked each other. So I was out $200 for the calculator and another $150 to change the combination. This was 2018 money, so it hurt pretty bad. To anyone who's had to buy a TI Nspire CX2 in 2018 or 2019, you know how much these things cost. My mom happened to be poker buddies with one of the county detectives. I'll call him Detective Sampson, or Uncle Sam for short. He went to the school to discuss these thefts and requested the security camera footage from the day my calculator vanished. He got completely brushed off. It's a non-existent problem, the principal, Mr. Hawkins, told him. He must have given out his locker combination. When Uncle Sam mentioned getting a warrant for the footage, Mr. Hawkins scoffed. You'll need more than that. We'll fight it in court, citing student privacy. That's when the pro-revenge kicked in. Uncle Sam showed up at our house with a laptop in a bag. Put this in your locker, he said, and spread the word about your brand new laptop. Okay, sure, Uncle Sam, I replied, confused but intrigued. 3 days later, I arrived at my locker between classes to find the laptop and bag gone, along with my water bottle and some pens. I texted Uncle Sam immediately. The laptop's been taken, I wrote. His reply came quickly. Stand by for the fireworks. Oh, and you reported the theft to the police, FYI. Got it, I texted back, still puzzled. The next morning, Uncle Sam arrived at school with 3 uniformed officers. They pulled a student named Ethan out of class, along with his mom, Mrs. Roberts, who worked in the front office. Mr. Hawkins was livid. You can't just barge in here and accuse my students, he shouted at Uncle Sam. Actually, I can, Uncle Sam replied calmly. I have a warrant to search a particular house. The laptop had a tracker and its value makes this theft a felony. The following afternoon, Uncle Sam set up a tent just outside school grounds with a banner that read, If you've had something stolen from your locker, see me. By the next morning, Ethan and his mom made the local news. Apparently, Ethan had allegedly used his mom's login to access the school network and retrieve locker combinations. He'd then open random lockers, looking for valuables to steal. Uncle Sam's stand attracted a flood of theft reports. Each locker counted as a separate misdemeanor unless the stolen object was worth more than $1,000, making it a felony. In less than a week, Uncle Sam cracked the case wide open. Ethan and his mom were charged with 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanor charges. When I finally got the full story from Uncle Sam, I was amazed. So that laptop had a GPS tracker? I asked. He nodded. Yep. We deliberately let it get stolen, then got a warrant to search the property where it ended up. The laptop's value pushed it into felony territory. What about the other charges? I wondered. 8 more felonies for high-value items like jewelry, recovered from other lockers. Anything over $1,000 was a felony, under that a misdemeanor. You alone netted us a felony for the laptop and a misdemeanor for your calculator. The 9 felony thefts totaled around $15,000, while the 35 misdemeanor charges added up to about $4,000 in stolen goods. Is this everything they stole? I asked. Uncle Sam shook his head. This is just what we could prove and trace back to victims. There were likely many more unreported thefts. The case became the talk of our small town, easily the biggest crime spree in decades. The prosecutor refused to offer a plea deal, determined to make an example of Ethan and his mom. Next came a class action lawsuit against the school district. Everyone who'd been charged $150 to change their locker combinations joined in. The justification? The school did nothing to investigate the 44 proven and likely 200-plus cases of locker theft, then charged us to change the combinations. There were 218 people in the class, and after attorney's fees, we each got $100 back. Mr. Hawkins lost his job for mishandling the situation so badly. You know what's funny? I told my friends later. The school paid $150 per locker to change the locks, but they had to return $100 per locker to us, so they're out $21,800 plus their legal fees for the lawsuit. The criminal trial was next. The prosecutor offered Ethan 5 years in juvenile detention and 5 in adult prison with 15 years for his mom. They refused the deal. In the end, Ethan got 1 year for each felony, the state minimum, and 1 month probation for each misdemeanor. That's 9 years plus 35 months of probation. His mom received 18 years in jail and 6 years probation. During the trial, they showed footage of Ethan entering over 20 lockers. The judge was not amused, especially considering there were likely other unreported crimes. "You abused your position and your son's trust," the judge told Mrs. Roberts during sentencing. "Your actions have caused immeasurable harm to this community." But the best part? I got my graphing calculator back. It had my name engraved inside the battery compartment. I still have it along with this wild story to tell. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought taking out the trash would lead to such a crazy situation, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I live with my parents and little brother Tommy in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Well, it used to be quiet until the Johnsons moved in next door about 6 months ago. From day one, Karen Johnson made it clear she was going to be a problem neighbor. Within a week of moving in, she'd already complained to us about our lawn being too long, it wasn't, our mailbox being the wrong shade of black, and the unsightly flower beds my mom had lovingly tended for years. We tried to be polite at first, figuring they were just stressed from the move, but Karen's demands and complaints only escalated. She'd march over multiple times a week to lecture us about some perceived violation of neighborhood standards. Mind you, we don't even have an homeowners association. Karen just appointed herself the supreme ruler of our street. My parents did their best to placate her without giving in to her ridiculous demands. They'd listen politely, promise to look into it, and then go about our lives as normal. This seemed to work for a while, though Karen would still glare at us whenever we were outside. Things came to a head last Tuesday. It was garbage day, and my 8-year-old brother Tommy was excited to help out by taking our trash cans to the curb. My parents had been teaching him about responsibility, and he was eager to show he could handle this weekly chore. I was in my room working on homework when I heard shouting outside. I ran to the window and saw Karen screaming at Tommy, who was standing frozen next to our trash cans with a terrified look on his face. I bolted downstairs and out the front door. As I got closer, I could hear Karen's shrill voice. "You little delinquent! How dare you violate city ordinances! I'm calling the police right now to have you arrested." Tommy was in tears at this point. I ran up and put myself between him and Karen. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Karen sneered at me. "Your criminal brother here is illegally dumping trash on city property. I've had enough of your family's blatant disregard for the rules. He's going to jail where he belongs." I was dumbfounded. "Are you insane? He's just putting our trash cans out for collection. You know, like everyone does every week?" "Trash cans are supposed to be placed exactly 6 inches from the curb," Karen shot back. "His are clearly 7.5 inches away. That's illegal dumping, and I won't stand for it in my neighborhood." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman was seriously trying to have my little brother arrested over 1.5 inches of sidewalk space. "Karen, you need to back off right now," I said firmly. "Tommy hasn't done anything wrong. Go home and leave us alone." But Karen wasn't backing down. She whipped out her phone and started dialing. "Hello, police? Yes, I need to report an illegal dumping in progress. There's a juvenile delinquent who needs to be arrested immediately." I quickly pulled out my own phone and started recording. There was no way I was letting Karen twist this situation when the cops showed up. To my shock, 2 police cruisers came screeching up about 10 minutes later. I guess Karen had some pull with the local PD. The officers got out and approached us. "What seems to be the problem here?" one asked. Before I could say anything, Karen launched into her insane rant about illegal dumping and demanding Tommy be hauled off to juvie in handcuffs. The cops listened with increasingly skeptical expressions. When she finally ran out of steam, I calmly explained what had actually happened and showed them my video of Karen's meltdown. I also pointed out that every single house on the street had their trash cans out in preparation for the next morning's pickup. The officers exchanged a look, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, there's clearly no crime being committed here. Putting out trash for weekly collection is not illegal dumping. We're going to have to ask you to stop making false reports to police." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of purple. But, the ordinance clearly states 6 inches. Are you police officers or garbage men? Do your jobs and arrest this young hoodlum." At this point, my parents had come outside to see what all the commotion was about. My dad put his arm around Tommy protectively while my mom asked what was going on. One of the officers sighed heavily. "Ma'am, even if there was such an ordinance, which I highly doubt, it would be a civil code issue, not a criminal offense. We can't arrest a child for putting trash cans on the curb. Now please, return to your home and stop harassing your neighbors." Karen was practically foaming at the mouth now. "This is unacceptable. I'll have all your badges for this. I'm calling the mayor, the governor, the president. You'll all be sorry." She stormed off towards her house, still shouting threats. The officers apologized to us for the disturbance and advised us to call if Karen continued to harass us. They seemed genuinely concerned about her mental state. We thought that would be the end of it. Karen sulked in her house for a few days, only emerging to glare at us from behind her curtains. But the peace was short-lived. The following Tuesday, Tommy went to take out the trash again. This time, my dad went with him just in case. Sure enough, Karen came bursting out of her house as soon as they stepped onto the sidewalk. But instead of yelling, she had a triumphant smirk on her face. She marched up and thrust a sheet of paper at my dad. "Ha! I've got you now! Read it and weep, lawbreakers!" My dad glanced at the paper, then did a double take. "What the? Is this for real?" I came outside to see what was going on. Dad handed me the paper with a bewildered expression. It was some kind of official-looking document with a fancy seal at the top. As I read it, my jaw dropped. Somehow Karen had actually gotten a local judge to issue a temporary restraining order against our entire family. It forbade us from placing any waste receptacles or other items within 10 feet of the property line we shared with Karen. The order cited ongoing harassment and distress caused by our trash cans. "See? The law is on my side now," Karen crowed. "If you so much as think about putting those filthy trash cans anywhere near my property, I'll have you all thrown in prison." Dad was speechless. I was furious. "This is insane. How did you even get a judge to sign this?" Karen just smiled smugly. "I have my ways. Now get those trash cans off my site before I call the cops. And this time they'll have to arrest you." She flounced back to her house, cackling with glee. Dad and I looked at each other in disbelief. What were we supposed to do now? We decided to consult a lawyer friend of my parents. He was just as baffled by the restraining order, but confirmed it was genuine. He advised us to comply with it for now to avoid any legal trouble, but promised to help us fight it in court. For the next 2 weeks, we had to haul our trash cans down the street to put them in front of our other neighbor's house. They were understanding about the situation, but it was a huge hassle. Karen would stand in her driveway every Tuesday morning, watching us struggle with the cans and laughing. Finally, our day in court arrived. Karen showed up with a smug grin, clearly expecting an easy victory. But our lawyer was prepared. He presented evidence of Karen's long history of harassing our family and other neighbors. He had statements from the police officers who responded to her bogus call about Tommy. He even had an affidavit from the garbage collection company stating that Karen's demanded 6-inch rule wasn't a real ordinance. The judge listened to both sides, then took a brief recess to consider his decision. When he returned, he looked directly at Karen with a stern expression. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm frankly appalled by your behavior," he began. "You've abused the legal system, harassed your neighbors, and wasted valuable court resources with this frivolous action. I'm vacating the temporary restraining order immediately." Karen's face fell, but the judge wasn't done. "Furthermore, I'm issuing a new restraining order against you. You are to cease all contact with your neighbors and stay at least 100 feet away from their property at all times. If you violate this order, you will be subject to fines and possible jail time. Do you understand?" Karen sputtered incoherently for a moment before storming out of the courtroom. We could hear her shrieking at her husband in the hallway about appealing the decision. As we left the courthouse, we felt an immense sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over. Tommy could take out the trash without fear of being arrested. We could live our lives in peace again. Karen and her family moved away a few months later. I guess she couldn't stand living next to us without being able to complain. The new neighbors who bought their house are lovely people who actually bring us cookies sometimes instead of legal threats. Looking back, it's hard to believe how crazy things got over something as simple as trash cans. But I'm proud of how my family stood up to Karen's bullying and came out on top. And Tommy? He still takes the trash out every week with a big smile on his face, knowing he's not going to end up in handcuffs for it. The next one is a petty revenge story. I'm cackling right now. My teenager and husband are constantly leaving the baby gates I have installed on the stairs and door to the mudroom open. The dog will then go into the mudroom and eat the cat litter, or she'll pee on the carpeted landing or go up to our room to get into our trash or the diaper pail. It drives me bananas. Making them clean it up doesn't seem to deter them from constantly forgetting to shut the gates. My teenager maintains that they don't leave the gate open, so I bought one of those window alarms that has a separate magnet, and then the main unit, so when you separate them, it alarms that the window is open. You can put these things just about anywhere, such as doors, fridge or freezer, cabinets, etc. You can also set a delay, which is what I did, so it isn't alarming just from someone walking through. Currently upstairs with the toddler for a nap and heard the teenager go down the stairs, and 30 seconds later the alarm starts going off. I sent them laughing face emojis and they just said die. I responded with a kissy face and offered to turn it up louder if they'd like me to. But I'm sitting here trying not to wake the baby up from laughing. I didn't tell my husband I bought these alarms, so I can't wait for him to come home and find out about them too. Edit. For those saying the timer should be shorter, I agree, I just don't have another option. There are 3 settings: 0's delay, and the alarm plays every 5 is 30's delay, and the alarm plays every 20's. Or 0's delay, and the alarm plays continuously. Other alarms I was looking at had similar options. This is just the one that was cost effective, came in a 2-pack, and could get here within a day. Husband is home but hasn't gone upstairs or through the mudroom yet. He usually skips the mudroom and comes inside through the sliding doors. It's almost toddler bath time, so I'm sure it'll happen soon. Update. Husband did indeed leave the gate open. He made it back over to the stove where he had the loud fans on, so he didn't immediately hear the alarm. Everyone else heard it, and I said, "Who left the gate open?" My middle child immediately gave up my husband and said he did it. My husband said it wasn't me, and she fired back at him that he just came down the stairs, and it definitely was him. Then the alarm went off again, and he said, "What is that?" And then, "Really, babe?" before rolling his eyes and marching over to fix the gate. Everyone got a pretty good laugh about it. I'll have to give it a trial run and see how well it deters them from leaving it open in the future. Final update. I worked nights all weekend and slept during most of the day, sat sun. Throughout that time, I heard the gate alarms go off frequently. The teenager stayed in their room most of the time, so it was definitely my husband setting it off the majority of the time. I haven't rubbed it in his face, yet. He knows that I know that he's aware he's the problem. To his credit, he hasn't complained about it, at least not to my face, though I did hear him say, "Oh god damn it," once before going back to shut a gate. And neither he nor the teenager have decided to just flip the off switch on the side, so at least they're going along with it. The teenager is much more vocal about their hatred of the alarm, said it's a very overstimulating sound, to which I said, "Then I guess you'd better shut the gate, eh?" They're proving to be much more trainable than my husband, but hopefully with a few more weeks of Pavloving him, he'll just do it automatically. Thanks for all the comments, I got a lot of chuckles out of them. The next one is a malicious compliance story. About 10 years ago, I was working in a big organization with lots of different departments. I was a subject matter expert working across different departments. I saw my job as making the people I worked with's lives as simple as possible, and my clients loved me for that. Unfortunately, this came back to bite me because they started expecting me to perform miracles. Before I started at this job, someone had decided to split up a department, except they didn't really do it properly. So all the systems still saw them as a single department. The 2 department heads despised each other. My solution? Create a workaround in the system I had control over so that they looked separate from each other and no one saw the other area's data. But in every other system, one department looked like it fell under the bigger one. And if you looked closely at my reports, you could very clearly see the workaround. Department head of the smaller department was really sick of this and asked me to fix it. I explained that the issue was at the organization level. She needed to write to the higher-ups and get written authorization to change the official org structure. Then once that was done, the rest of the systems would follow suit. If I changed it in my system, then something would break and she would have bigger problems than just having to ignore a header that I would hide or delete from her reports. She insisted that if I changed the structure in my system, it would start a domino effect and everyone else, who was less helpful than I was, would have to listen to her when she said that she wanted their system changed to mimic mine. I tried to make a joke of it, explaining that I know I look like I'm all powerful because I can get stuff done for her. This was not going to work out that way. She actually needed to deal with the organization bureaucracy BS. Trust me, I can't help with this one. This response only frustrated her more. We went around this for about a year and she finally lost it with me. She called me late one Friday afternoon and told me I had to make the change or else. I explained again that things would break, but she wasn't having it. She cut me off and told me to do as she asked or else. Cue malicious compliance. I asked her to put a request in writing. Always cover your arse. She promptly sent me an email. I responded straight away saying doing this is going to break stuff. We have discussed it before, but since you insist, I'll get the changes sorted ASAP. I organized for the change in my system, stopped by my boss's office on my way out to tell him what was happening and to prepare for the fallout. Again, always cover your arse. He chuckled and wished me a good weekend. The change was easily reversible, and the problems would be very frustrating but minor. No one was going to die, so neither of us were too concerned. 11 a.m. Monday, department head calls me in a huff. Apparently, she wasn't able to see any of her staff in the HR system. I said that sounds about right, now that my system and HR don't agree. Computer says no. Remember how I told you things would break? This is things breaking. I'm happy to switch my system back. She simply hung up on me. Word is, she called the HR person who told her that the only way to get the change she wanted was to follow the process I had been pointing to for the past year, and that only she had the authority to ask for the change. She spent the rest of the day pulling favors to get the process I told her about months before fast-tracked. All of this could have happened without anything needing to break. By our next meeting, things had been changed properly. The situation was never mentioned again. But from that day onwards, if I told her that I couldn't do something, she took my word for it. The next one is an entitled people story. For those that don't know, a rollator is basically a walker on wheels. I had a stroke 6 years ago, and my balance and vision got messed up. I can walk maybe 20-25 feet on a flat surface without help, but I need my rollator to take long walks and take it with me whenever I go somewhere. I normally have weekly groceries delivered to me at my apartment, but every month or 6 weeks, depending on schedules, my mom will take me to a specialty grocery store where I can get a lot of pre-packaged meals that I just have to put in the microwave for a while. We were on one of these trips and were waiting in line checking out. The rollator that insurance covers was a piece of cheap white plastic, so last Christmas my mom bought me one that is black steel and titanium composition. It also has a pouch on the back for storing things, and when I need a break I can lock the wheels, and it has a fold-out bench I can sit on. So, while my groceries were being checked out, I folded out the bench and sat down waiting. When we were done, I got up and unlocked the wheels while my mom rolled out my cart of groceries. I had barely got 5 feet when a lady walked up and grabbed my rollator saying, "I'll take this." I said no, and jerked it away from her and proceeded to follow my mom out to the parking lot. Usually my mom will load the groceries in the car while I leave the rollator on the side and walk my way to the passenger's seat. After loading the groceries, my mom collapses the rollator and puts in on top of the groceries. This lady followed us out to the car and was waiting there, tapping her foot while we loaded the groceries. I didn't trust her, so I just stood holding the rollator. My mom said, "Go ahead, get in, it's unlocked." And I just shook my head no and tried to subtly point at the lady as to why I wasn't getting in. Mom understood and finished loading the groceries. When she was done, she came up to me, folded down the rollator while I walked to the passenger side door. Mom folded down the rollator, put it on top of the bags in the car, and was closing the door when the lady started shrieking about how we were stealing store property. I don't know if someone got him or what, but a manager type came out and asked what was going on. The lady screamed about how we were stealing the rollator and she needed to use it. The manager asked my mom about it, and she said it was mine, and even showed him the plaques bolted on that had my name, emergency contacts, and medications, and the schedule I was on in case I needed them. The lady kept screaming that she needed it now that we were done. The manager told her that it was mine, it had information on it that pertained only to me, and that if she needed help they could find her a mobility scooter or something. She didn't like this and suddenly went from shrieking harpy to sweet old lady saying, well, maybe she could leave it here and I could use it and leave it when I am done for them to come back and get. The manager asked, would that be okay with you? And my mom, knowing we would never see it again, said that we couldn't. We had other places to go where I would need it. The lady began screaming again while we just drove off. I don't know how it ended up for the manager, but I hope he survived it. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.